You are here to clean, stupid. Only speak when spoken to, no questions asked.
What is going on here? Why is he doing the cleaner's job?
I was there that morning, the day Vance Global quietly decided who it really was. From the other side of the glass walls, I watched a white Porsche 911 scream into the parking lot, sliding into two spaces like it owned the asphalt. One of them was a handicap spot. Caleb Sterling stepped out, designer sneakers gleaming, grinning like the world belonged to him. Seconds later, a man arrived on a bicycle. Arthur Vance locked it carefully, adjusted his plain off-brand suit, and walked toward the entrance like he had nowhere else to be. If you didn't know him, you'd miss it, the posture of someone who belonged anywhere. But Caleb noticed. He always noticed people he thought were beneath him. He tossed Arthur his keys. "Hey, maintenance," Caleb laughed. "Park it in the shade, and don't touch the seat. It costs more than your student loans. What, the basketball career didn't pan out? Or did you just realize the world needs people to fetch the water too?" Arthur opened his mouth, closed it, calm. "I'm actually the new intern," he said evenly. "Arthur Vance, I was told to report." Caleb laughed louder. "An intern? At 33? You look like a swinger. Start writing. My father always said some people are born to build the tools and some are born to swing the hammers. You look like a swinger." Have you ever seen a room go quiet without anyone saying a word? Because I did. And through the glass-walled conference room, Kate standing with a cup of coffee he suddenly couldn't drink, was Julian Vance, the retiring chairman, Arthur's father. The man who built this empire brick by brick. His hand tightened around the mug. Inside the break room, Caleb found new ways to make small feel microscopic. He pointed to a microwave crusted with years of neglect. "Clean it. And while you're at it, handwrite this." He dropped a thick ledger on the counter. 200 pages of our digital security protocol. I want to be sure you actually read it. Use a pen. Your people are good with manual labor, right? Arthur didn't argue. He rolled up his sleeves. And then came the moment that still haunts me. Caleb accidentally knocked over a container of soup, watched it spread across the floor, and tossed a roll of paper towels at Arthur's feet. Arthur knelt, scrubbed, silent. Through the glass, Julian stopped walking. Executives laughed beside him, unaware that a father was watching the man he raised to lead continents clean a floor in the building that bore their name. Julian's hand reached for the door. Arthur looked up. Their eyes met. Arthur gave the smallest shake of his head. "Don't step in. Let it show." Julian turned away, smiling for the executives while something inside him broke. What would you have done in that moment, spoken up, or stayed silent to see the truth? Maya Chen sat quietly at a corner desk, watching. She slipped Arthur a sandwich when Caleb wasn't looking. "Here, don't let him starve," she whispered. Arthur nodded once, no words needed. That small gesture would mean everything later. Have you ever quietly relied on someone's faith in you, knowing it could make all the difference? Later that morning, Caleb strutted through a team huddle, bragging about an AI neural sync system optimizing budgets. Arthur asked one question. Quiet, precise. "Doesn't that model create a 15% compliance risk for overseas data?" Caleb froze. He didn't know. He'd never written the report. Caleb's hands trembled over the keyboard, sweat formed at his temples. The system began glitching under his command, and panic set in. Arthur walked over. He didn't touch the mouse. He typed 3 precise commands into the terminal. A moment later, the system restored itself, flawless, calm, steady fingers, like he had built it. Caleb's chest heaved. "Don't touch my station again, or I'll have security." Arthur didn't flinch, not a muscle, not a word. And still, Arthur complied, because some tests aren't about strength, they're about exposure. Have you ever watched someone solve a problem silently while others panic and realized you'd underestimated them your whole life? The reveal came that evening at Julian Vance's retirement party. Crystal glasses, soft music, smiles sharpened by ambition. Julian stepped to the podium. "I've spent 40 years building Vance Global," he said. "Before I introduce our next CEO, I want to talk about character." The lights dimmed. Security footage played, keys tossed, slurs masked as jokes, shoes being polished. A man on his knees. Gasps rippled through the room. Arthur walked in, no longer in the off-brand suit, but in a perfectly cut Savile Row masterpiece. He stood beside his father, calm as gravity. Caleb tried to laugh. Tried. Arthur spoke. "Caleb, I didn't just fire you from Vance Global. This morning's recordings were sent unaltered to the ethics committees of every major firm in the city. You're not just leaving this building, you're leaving this industry. A pause. Your deprecated hardware. Outside, a tow truck's hydraulics hissed. Caleb turned, watched his Porsche rise from the pavement. Arthur continued. The company lease on your car? Terminated. Corporate housing? Effective immediately. Then he handed Caleb the thick ledger, the same 200-page manual Caleb forced Arthur to write. Since you value manual labor so much, Arthur said, your severance depends on a handwritten apology to every employee you bullied. Use a pen. Arthur picked up the designer blazer from Caleb's chair and handed it to Maya. Maya, this office is yours. Julian stepped forward, voice low and steady. You told my son he smelled like poverty? Julian asked. He leaned closer. That smell is called sweat, Caleb. Something you've never had to use to get what you want. But looking at you now, all I see is a man who is morally bankrupt. Security, please escort this asset to the curb. Cheers erupted. Arthur didn't smile. Kings don't. Caleb stood in the lobby, clutching a cardboard box, watching his world roll away on 4 lifted tires. Every glance he cast was met with the unspoken judgment of staff who had finally seen him for what he was. Hollow. From the balcony, Arthur looked down, not in triumph, but in restoration. He turned once toward Maya, who now stood tall, shoulders squared, the blazer perfectly fitted. A subtle nod passed between them. Respect earned, dignity restored. And I realized something then. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. Have you ever seen someone quietly reclaim what was always theirs without a word of malice? That's the power of patience. That's the power of justice. If you believe stories like this matter, where dignity rises and silence is broken, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that like button if you feel the sting of Caleb's downfall and the quiet triumph of Arthur. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. Truth matters. Character matters. Courage matters. Because this is from the other side of silence, Toss Stories, where truth rises, dignity stands, and every hidden story finds its voice. Like, subscribe, and share, because the stories we tell decide the world we tolerate.